Hi, everybody. I'm going to just start. We're Pandion Music Foundation. So excited to have you all. I'm Rebecca Trujillo Vest. We have Carlos Wolf. We're both co-founders with Pandion Music Foundation. Today, our guest star is Greg Sweeney, music supervisor, and I'm going to introduce him in a sec. I'm going to just tell us a little bit about Pandion. We're a free online platform empowering artists as they navigate the music industry through educational resources, workshops, wellness guidance, and direct access to experts like Greg, helping to provide a constant thread of support for music creators with specific emphasis on uplifting music creators from the underprivileged and marginalized communities. And so Pandion Music Foundation it's all run on donations, and that's why we offer our services for free. And would love it after you're done with this workshop to let us know how you are feeling about Pandion Music Foundation. You can email us at hello@pandionmusicfoundation.org and give us a blurb of what you look forward to, what you love about Pandion, maybe what you don't like about it. We'll take it all, the good, the bad, and the beautiful. And Greg Sweeney is an award-winning veteran music supervisor working for Motive Creative, focusing on theatrical trailers and promos for such clients as A24, Apple Plus, Amazon, Max, Netflix, Focus Features, MGM, Searchlight, Sony Pictures. Oh my gosh, this is so much and so incredible.
It's all the streamers, all the streamers, Disney
Oh,
Plus,
that's
all the
so
pluses.
good. All the pluses. Previously, Greg was the lead music supervisor for international home entertainment, TV promo, and digital campaigns at MobScene. Before starting in theatrical marketing, Greg was an in-house music creative for Warner Brothers TV and worked on such hit shows as The Big Bang Theory, which is awesome, Two and a Half Men, Rizzoli, and Isles and Smallville, which is a favorite of some people of mine, to only name a few. And he is also an avid record collector. Ooh, how cool. And occasionally DJ guest. That sounds amazing. So Greg, maybe you could give a little also intro about yourself and tell us all why we are so excited to be here with you today.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's nice to see so many people here. I wasn't really sure like how many people would even, show up, but it's nice, and I definitely am looking forward to, sharing kind of what I do and what, the trailer world needs in terms of like music and how sync kind of works in the trailer world. I mean, not to go too far back, but I kind of fell into this career. I always wanted to do something with, putting music and video together, and I thought that was through editing. I had no idea music supervision was even a thing. I mean, I'm dating myself, but this goes back a while. Now there's, college courses and you can kind of find, there's books on it. I really didn't know anything about it. So I just kind of fell into it, but it was like kind of a perfect, meld. And specifically in trailers, I get to work directly with editors and producers. So having that editorial background a little bit just kind of helps, communicate things to the editors, which is nice. I've been in the theatrical marketing, trailers, as it is kind of like more commonly known, for, over a decade now. So over that time, I've seen a lot of different trends and different different styles emerge, and it's constantly a changing field. Something that could be in fashion one month is no longer what the client wants now. So it's always changing, which adds a level of excitement and just keeps it fresh, because really it's as much as people, I mean, would say in trailers that it's they always want big songs, they meaning the client, are the studios, to sell their movies. It's just, how do you make that song work for a trailer? You know, that's always the kind of creative question. And that's kind of where, you know, the real creativity comes from, I think. You know, just kind of like the little things that, you know, kind of make a trailer cue stand out. And I can get into more specifics, but I don't know if there's anything else I should be saying about that,
No,
or if you want
this
more
is great.
background.
Yeah, so I mean, it's also interesting. Yes, coming from an editor's perspective gives you a whole other opportunity for a vision, and what people and what supervisors and editors and producers and directors are looking for in music, and also ads, I'm sure. But yeah, for trailer, it's a whole world. It's like a whole thing in particular. So
Yeah,
maybe
it's a
you can give us
microcosm.
exactly. Maybe you can give us a like a little mini 101 class on on like how somebody takes the song and makes it into a trailer. But beyond that, I mean, you could just, we love, all of us love hearing, about you, and also just your experiences, like your inside secrets of how it could help our music community, just the little things, the little tweaks that people can do, maybe even their outlook, all of these things are very helpful, and it brings us more awareness to what to help each other, because I know that we're all human beings trying to do the best that we can and bring out the best beautiful music. And so yeah, that's, so you could give us a little bit of insight into that. Would be great.
Yeah, sorry, I have my window open, and if you hear a dog bark, that's my dog.
We love
And
dogs.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's not, unheard of nowadays with everyone being on Zoom and, a lot of working from home. So, but I was gonna say is that, in trailers, we're really telling a story. We're boiling down the whole movie to 2.5 minutes, sometimes 90 seconds. So it's all about storytelling, and the music is a huge part of that. So a lot of the times, music needs to have kind of these sections in trailers to really work. Um, that's a smaller intro, a little bit bigger middle section, and a much bigger back end. So it's a 3-act structure, more or less. Sometimes there's stop downs in between those sections to kind of note when the kind of act is changing. And we in trailers use that a lot to maybe put a big shot of a big battle scene, or it's a funny line from a comedy. So it's just like these little accent points that really help make a cue stand above others. The 3-act structure, it's usually the cues are about 2.5 minutes long. 3 minutes, longer is better because the editor is always going to chop it, kind of cut it up. But we're looking for like a good minute in the beginning, and that's just where we can kind of set up the world that the movie lives in. The middle section, where kind of the music evolves and kind of picks up. Maybe it's gets bigger, maybe it's more pace to it. That section is usually where we get into the story of the film. What is the conflict? Like we've already introduced where who everyone is. Now it's what is the big, what is this movie basically about, without giving away the ending. And then the 3rd act, the back end, that is where we have the big montage. It's made a lot of cutting, a lot of that's the action sequences. That's comedy. It's much quicker, and it's just kind of flying all around the movie with peppered in with a couple lines from the film, maybe a couple lyrics there, and then building all to a big crescendo. Then we stop down, and then we go into a little reprise for the main title. So that's kind of like the general format, as it were, for trailers. And a lot of the times we're asked for the biggest songs in the world, so these are huge copyrights, and not everyone has those. I get that. But that's why covers are always needed, because then an artist can bring their own creativity and own vision to that song and make it their own and do it in a different way that we don't previously have. And that becomes instantly recognizable and fresh and new, which is like the golden ticket basically for trailers. Even though I've seen trends now that they don't really, it seems like marketing doesn't care as much if a song has been used previously. Before it was like a non-starter. But I feel like things are, they're more into upcycling, recycling songs now. But, for people with original songs, there are a lot of opportunities, especially when we have projects that have a more restrictive budget and the studios can't afford, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Eminem, Jay-Z, whatever it is. Then we always have to look for, indie, people who are self-published, or own their own masters. And that's where we rely on a lot of sync agents to do that, because they've kind of vetted artists, writers, and everything so that we know that, this stuff will clear. And if it does get used and the client starts to clear it, there won't be any hiccups down the road. So that's, we rely on those contacts a lot. But in those instances, that's where an original song can really make its way into a trailer. Because to be honest, trailers, it's amazing that any trailer comes out because there are so many different levels of approval it has to get. Internally, we're trying to make the best trailer possible. And that's, producers, editors, myself. And then we send it to the client. Then the client will have notes, and the client is usually the marketing exec at the studio. They'll send us notes. We'll adjust those. Maybe they deal with music. Maybe, it's changed this, or because of their notes, we have to change the music a little bit. Maybe they need more shots of a different actor. So we need to expand a section. So we work a lot with composers who do customs, and or we work with the artists who did the original song and ask them to, can you extend that section? Or we'll get into the stems of the song, which is also very important to have, to then be able to then chop it up and kind of, use those stems to make those moments we need. After, a couple back and forth rounds between us and the marketing execs, then it goes up to their boss. And then sometimes, after that, then it goes up to the director, or one of the, stars is a producer, and everyone has a say. When we work on TV programs, programming, which is kind of like higher up in, say Max or Hulu or whatever, the programmers get a say. So there's so many people that have to say yes to it, that it's a wonder that anything gets brought out eventually. And not to mention, we're also competing against other trailer houses on the same project. So there's so much going on there that it's a lot to navigate just on that end. But luckily, over the years, just been able to navigate that successfully, and kind of understand how it all kind of ties into each other.
Wow, yes, there's so much that goes into this and so much thought. So being a trailer house, you prefer to get the song in its original form rather than somebody handing you something that they would think that might work as a trailer.
I mean, to be honest, no. I mean, I encourage people to, you can have your original song, but also if you feel like there is, it would really lend itself to a trailer, do a trailer mix of it,
Okay.
So you have both versions.
Right.
So, maybe because maybe the original song would work great in a film, in a TV show, maybe in an ad, but for a trailer, we definitely need that evolution of the instrumentation and kind of stepping up so that each section feels bigger than the last. Then sometimes there are people may do a really good job at trailerizing something, sometimes, it may not be their forte. And so I also encourage people to maybe, there's other composers that do that for, a living, and really have that structure and sound down, and then do like a co-write with them. So it's that's another possibility and an avenue to kind of get stuff more in line, because if it's 70% of the way, 80% of the way, it really helps us a lot, and it's easier to help us convince or kind of sell the idea to our editor or producer, because sometimes people are like, I just don't see it, or I don't hear it, but being a music supervisor for so long, you kind of be like, no, there's something here.
Right. And then having that editor's kind of hat that you wear sometimes. Also, you probably understand the importance of finding the right song through metadata, or maybe, when you're looking through and you're trying quickly to, like, they have a deadline. So having the stems ready right then and there, having the metadata. Anything else that would be helpful?
It's usually, it starts off with, like, we get the song, we don't need the stems up front. We get the song, we'll put that into a batch that we give to the editor producer. Then we all kind of discuss what works, what song that we want to go with, and then we'll ask for stems. Having instrumental a cappella and stems are always great to have. Metadata, obviously, contacts, who do I need, who does the studios need to contact to license this song. If it's just one stop, great. If there's two people, please put them both. Like, put as much as information as possible, so that it makes it easy for someone to clear that music. Obviously keywords are great. It's a little bit tricky because not everyone uses the same terms. Like, yes, things that are, horror or action, maybe those are general, but, sometimes it's like, you can say the song's emotional, but is it heartwarming? Is it sad? Is it romantic? There's all these nuances. I always love when someone, says in an email or in the metadata, sounds like these other bands, because, like you're saying, in a pinch, we're going to, say if we need to find a song that's like the Strokes, I may just type in Strokes and see what else comes up. Or if, we're looking for something that's for the Rolling Stones, boom, like, other things will come up. And, sometimes you discover things in that search because you were looking for a Rolling Stones song, but then you found this other band that had that in the metadata. And I'm like, oh, let me listen to that. And you're like, oh, that's really good. Maybe it's not for this, maybe it's for that, because we're also working on multiple projects at the same time. So a lot of the times I'm listening for, potentially 2 to 3 projects at the same time. One I'm focused on, but the other ones are in the back. And I'm like, oh, that wouldn't be for this, but oh, it could work for that, could be working for that. So that's helpful to have in the metadata. Or, I use Disco to do a lot of organization of my music and searches. I also have like a hard drive that, I use that has a, backup of all my old pulls, all my, all the old files I have. And, it's constantly growing, obviously, because we get a lot of new music every day. So it's hard to get a read on everything, but that's why, like, something like Disco or something that's pitched for a particular project is nice to have that information, handy.
Yes. And then do you think now, with the competitive, field of licensing, the word is out, producers and creators, music creators are getting more interested in licensing? And do you find that that's elevating the type of music that you're hearing in terms of indie music or, unknowns? I would think you would be, but I'm just curious.
No, it has. Obviously, everyone thinks like, oh, sync, I can make money off my music. And, it's, for a trailer, we're using probably about, two cues, two main music cues. The rest is all sound design. in a TV show, a lot more opportunities. In a film, a lot more opportunities. So it's like getting that needle in a haystack stack to find itself into like an ad or a trailer. But obviously, there's good money to be made in that. But I feel that because people have gotten a lot more savvier about what works for sync, that people's production has improved, songwriting, and they've kind of the people who really rise above, they've really analyzed what's working. I'm a big hip hop head, and the hip hop back in the day that was from libraries or from like indie artists wasn't quite there. Now a lot of the times you'll hear not a major artist on big trailers with hip hop. We just recently finished a song on the Pain Hustler teaser for Netflix with an indie hip hop artist. And it used to be where a lot of the artists would think that they needed to be a lot of rapping or a lot of lyrics in it. And really, we're only going to be using a few lines. So it's just, give us, lyrics space, so we can cut, different, dialogue bits in between those lyrics. And that goes for, whether a rock song or a ballad or whatever it is. We do like to have those little gaps in between the lyrics. Not to say that's necessary, because we can always get the instrumental and drop those lyrics out. But, people have gotten a lot more savvier about writing for sync and what works in ads, what works in trailers, what works in TV and promos. Promos is another great place for, indie artists to get that foothold, because a lot of those times, the studios don't have the budget for a major label song, so they need to find something that is on par with that, obviously, but isn't from a major label or publisher.
Right. Do you prefer to get your music through agencies or directly, through music creators that you find out about, or just in general, just all over the place? So that comes up a lot with our group.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, having that intermediary, a sync agent that, we've have a history with, that we have relationships with, helps, because it's up, we need someone to kind of pre-vet the stuff. But because of panels like this, I get to meet a lot of people, music creators, and then they I get to hear their music, and then some you get to build a relationship with and grow from there. Like, hey, I like this, we have this other project, would you have something for this? And then that kind of builds from there. It doesn't always happen right away, because it has to be the right project, that we feel could benefit from having different voices that we haven't already previously gone out to. And that's why I do enjoy doing panels, because I get to meet a lot of different people that I previously hadn't known. And there's a wealth of music out there. And there's no way possible that one person can have all that data at once. So it does help to have, some other aggregates to help funnel that music to us. But working a lot with artists directly is also a possibility. It's just hard to respond back to every email that we get, like, here, I just made this song. Now if you say, hey, I saw you on that panel, you said this, here's what I have like that, or here's something I feel is could work for a trailer, could it work on something that you're working on, because obviously we're not supposed to tell what we're working on, because we're having stuff before it's released. But you can always go back and look at the things that Motive has finished and kind of listen to what works. Like I was mentioning, the Pain Hustlers teaser, it was two indie artists in that. There's an opening cue and a back end cue. Or actually it was a library cue and then an indie artist. We also just did a trailer for Mr. Chow, aka Mr. Chow. It's a HBO or Max documentary about the restaurateur, Mr. Chow, and his transitioning into an artist, a visual artist. But that was using, a library cue and an indie artist. So it's always this, kind of combination that, it like I'm saying, it's usually two cues, but it's a combination of maybe it's a library cue and then an indie artist. So there are these opportunities, and it's just helpful to kind of make these connections to kind of build from here. And it's really helpful when people email, not just like, here's my music, it's referencing this panel, referencing a specific, trailer or type of trailer. And it could, to be honest, it could be something that we haven't even done, but it's like, hey, if you're ever working on like, I don't know, like, an action comedy, here's something that could work like that. Or if it's, this is a really cool avant-garde electronic song that, or cue that could work for, maybe it's like a thriller, send it our way, those type of things. But yeah, definitely look at what Motive has done and also what other trailers are out there. And it's like, if you're working on a movie like this, maybe you'd be interested in this cue.
Yeah, that's so helpful. I mean, I could see it from your perspective, especially when you're, like you said, like sometimes in a pinch and you're just trying to reach and you have somebody who gives you that full description and has something there handy. How great. Yeah, and
Yeah,
to
and
our
I use
community.
email too to like search as well. So much like I would, like, I use the Strokes, for example, on, in disco. I also may put that into my email because I may have gotten your email, I may have not responded, but I still have it, and I'll go back to it and be like, hey, I saw you wrote this, and listen to it and be like, this is interesting. And then we also have to, sometimes we have budget limitations. So we're like, hey, could it clear for this? Or is this going to be, is there any issues with this? So good to have all that, obviously the business already taken, taken into account, make sure all the, if there's any co-writers, everyone's agreed and all that. The business, yeah, just need the business to be taken care of before all that, so that we don't have to worry about who has splits and whatnot. Usually that's not the case, that's from my experience, but I know that sometimes can be an issue. And I've heard the horror stories of someone saying like, oh yeah, it's fine, and then they talk to their writing partner and it's like, no, because they had beef or whatever. So it's like, leave us out of it. Please take care of all that beforehand.
Right. Yeah, to have your split sheet and everything signed before you start submitting to agencies is a good idea, for anybody. I think also too, I think a lot of our community does do a lot of one-stops. So we're starting to
Yeah,
be, music creators around in our groups that I've been seeing are starting to be more creative and savvy about that. And so making it easier for supervisors like you to just take it and say, hey, this is great. And they have the stems ready, like, or whatever, it's just making making it easier for you, because then it makes it great for the music creator to get licensed. So that's the goal, right?
absolutely. Make it easy on yourself. Get all of that buttoned up so that when you pitch it, you have confidence of saying, I own all this. I have stems, I have, instrumentals, whatever you need. Because sometimes it trips us up when we have a song and it's like we're dealing with it right now with a company that is a sync rep, and we're looking for stems of a certain song. Luckily, I don't think it will hold us up too much, but they don't have them, and they won't get them till Saturday. Saturday is like so far off into the future for trailers. We're working on very tight deadlines. We're going to have to send out a cut by Friday on that one. So that's going to be way too late. Basically 2 days is too long for us. Even if it's for a music search to turn around a custom, we're working on 24, 12-hour turnarounds on when we need a custom done. Obviously sometimes there's leeway, but the kind of the motto is like the sooner the better. I mean, everything is ASAP, you know, and I kind of joke about it internally. It's like, we know it's ASAP, you know, but realistically, if we get this Thursday, is that going to, you know, harm us in delivering what we need to do?
Right. And so like let's say like so any given week you might get that Friday kind of urgent like request, and then you have to scramble, and you said Saturday's already too far into the future, but really that's that 12-hour turnaround or whatever. And so having everything at your hands that's accessible, so if you have the right song that has everything that you need, it's going to probably get picked over something that doesn't look like it's easy to clear or something. I would
Yeah,
assume.
or we're like, hey, you know, this person doesn't have their stem, we don't have the stems for this. You know,
Right,
can't, you know, maybe we have to pivot to something else. Now we do
right,
use AI tools to make stems, and that's a whole new kind of grayish area of sorts. But you know, that's in a pinch, that's always helpful. But they're not always all that good either. You know, we could try
right,
to make AI stems, but it could sound garbled and garbage, and it's not going to help us any. You know, so having the real thing obviously is always preferred. But
right,
like I said, like in a pinch, you know, we do use those if need be.
right. Speaking of AI and instrumentals, do you think the disco version that they do is pretty good?
I haven't,
Um,
I since I'm not, it's weird. I tried to use it because I was like, oh, can I just make instrumentals of anything I have? But no, I think it's on the other side because I'm like a supervisor side. So it has to be the music creator side. And so I don't know. I've never heard anything where I'm like, oh, that's definitely a, you know, AI instrumental, unless it sounds really bad. Then you
yeah,
can kind of tell it's been digitally manipulated. But you know, it's certainly interesting.
yeah. I
But I would
noticed that
hope
most
people would
people
just have instrumentals of their own music.
yeah,
So
make it
yeah,
easier, right?
yeah.
I noticed that when they try to do like the stacks of like the vocal stacks, when they try to separate it, that's when you kind of can't really separate it too much because it's like embedded into the music pretty well. So like when you are dealing with agencies, do you have some favorites that you like, that you use, that your go-tos?
Well, I mean, in terms of music searching,
Yeah,
or in
I
terms
guess
of,
like yeah, if like, maybe you have these top five or top 10 that you're just used to going to, or do you just really go with what has been submitted from agencies at the moment and see what just calls you at that moment so because we've talked to some in the past that say, well, these agencies are really great because I have this relationship with them, or maybe it's because every supervisor is different, and because you're with a
totally.
trailer house as well, it might be it just depends on the song probably submitted. So, but that was a question that was asked in the group, what are your top agents on your list? And so I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of agents, like I mean, it's not, when we're doing a music search, like we're going far and wide. You know, it's, you know, if a little bit more pinpoint, like say if it's like, look, they want a known song from the 70s. Well, not a lot of people have that, but if you have, you know, a catalog of vintage stuff, we're probably going to go to for this. You know, I have a emailing list of vintage catalog artists. You know, I mean, they may not have the biggest copyrights, but there could be something very cool in there, that may lend itself to this search. When it comes to like, when it comes to, you know, like when I think of like top five agents or something, or, you know, agencies, when I'm thinking of composers who we go to for the customs, or for um for a particular type of cue. And it really depends on the job, because I know, just from over the years, having kind of know what people's strengths are. Not to say that we only go to those, but like it really depends on what it is. If we need something uh elegantly produced, you know, really nuanced, you know, very, you know, creative and new and fresh, like there's a company called Totem that's amazing for their work, for library work, compositions, trailerizations, whatever it is. But we've also had a lot of success with Crystal Creative. Recently, they did the custom of War Pigs for our Napoleon trailer. They had helped us customize the music from The Idol for Max. And they had done stuff for us for Winning Time, and they're someone we go to a lot, not just for customization, but also for licensable songs, whether it's be instrumental compositions, or potentially indie artists. So I mean, it really depends, what the ask is, what the movie's about, and kind of over just knowing who to go to for that particular sound. Because we could on every search go out to 500 different people, but that's going to take so much time to go through all that music, and I don't want to waste anyone's time. Our time is precious, so we try to be a little bit more focused. And just to let you know, like on a music search, usually the first round or so, we're going through our own music first to just kind of do a gut pull, as we say, just what feels good to us that could work for this. And then we discuss with our team, and it's like, well, I don't think it's this, or it could be that, let's explore that further. And then from there, then we kind of do a brief and send out to different labels, publishers, and different sync agents.
Okay,
Just
cool.
to
So like
back
you
the
have
current a little
your
bit.
own, right. So you have your own collection that you've been,
Oh yeah,
acquiring. You do those first.
yeah.
You, obviously
And then
they're
also
your,
you have Spotify. I mean,
right.
there's I mean, sometimes like Bandcamp is useful. Especially if it's like something that's maybe like we're also looking for like Vietnamese funk from the 70s. Not a lot of people have that. So sorry. But like, so sometimes it's going to Bandcamp, like, well, who's putting out some Vietnamese funk comps, and see what exists there, and then try to reach out to the labels that way. So any way we can get music, we try to explore all options.
Wonderful. We're going to open it up for some questions because I know that everyone's eager to do
I
that.
see some questions already, and I'm not ignoring them. I was just didn't want to like answer one out of order.
Right,
But do you
right.
mind?
Why don't
I can.
Should I ask
maybe we'll
Claudia?
have Carl's. Yeah, Carl's
Yeah.
will lead it.
Okay, I have Claudio's in the chat, but I'm going to ask you to unmute. But if you don't want to ask in person, then feel free. I will ask it for you. So, Claudia, I'm going to try and ask you to unmute.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi.
Pandion.
I'm calling from Germany, so I'm not a native speaker, so please bear with me.
No worries.
Yeah, I was asking, or I was noticing, as anyone else, that right now so many trailers work with these trailerized pop songs. And I wonder if this is a trend that might be over pretty soon, because everyone's doing it. It might start to get boring, maybe, I don't know. So how do you see it, Greg? Have you heard from studios or producers that they are already looking for a different kind of music for trailers?
Well, I mean, a big song or a big copyright or a pop song, the studios are always going to kind of err on the side of caution, and a bigger song is going to bring in more people ideally to that project. For Napoleon, we had War Pigs in our trailer, but we also had a Queens of the Stone Age song. So in comparison, Black Sabbath may outweigh, Queens of the Stone Age a little bit, especially from a marketing perspective, because it's a bigger, more known, and just they would feel like it brings in more people. But recently, there's a couple trailers now that have come out where there's no customization. It's still a pop song, but they haven't customized it, which is an interesting kind of like thing to kind of what you're saying. Like, are they bored of this kind of like over trailerization of songs? Now, there's always going to be sound design, that's hits, rises, swooshes, stop downs, but not to the degree that, we've heard in recent years. The Dream Scenario sound trailer has the Cranberries' Dreams in it. But apparently there wasn't any customization in that. There's a couple other trailers that just came out that the film's name escapes me, but they use an LCD sound system. It's for Netflix, but they didn't do any trailerization. They do a little EQing to the song, but there isn't a massive trailerization to it. So I think there is kind of a trend going back towards just using a song as it is, but it's still a pop song necessarily. So for people who have songs that aren't as well known as those songs, I do think that, having it kind of be kind of remixed to fit a trailer format is beneficial still, because promos still do that. Kind of trailers set the trend in a way, but TV promos and stuff, they still can benefit from those type of structured cues for sure.
So you would say that it would still make sense for an artist to do some covers of famous pop songs in a trailerized version with orchestra and sound effects. That's still used, yeah?
Yes, it's still used. Covers aren't going away anytime soon.
Right.
And the dark haunted female cover, that was a trend, and that's gone away.
Yeah.
But just creating a cover of a song that's in a unique way, tone, kind of perspective really is always going to be helpful. And yes, it's very helpful if the music kind of progresses throughout and grows and builds.
Sure. And most of the times I hear female vocals. Is that right? That female vocals are more used than male ones?
I mean, I don't know. It does seem like that's the case.
Right.
But I don't, to be honest, I don't think that, that affects us at all. We're just looking for what the best song is.
Cool.
And a lot of the times if it's a female lead, whether consciously or subconsciously, you kind of want to hear a female vocal. Same with a male lead, you kind of want to hear a male vocal, but that's not a hard, fast rule. It's whatever kind of works tonally the best.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to Sarah. I'm just going to ask you to unmute in just a sec. There you are. Oh,
thank you.
You're unmuted. Great.
Yep, I'm unmuted. Thanks for being here, Greg. I just had a question on stems and making sure that everything's buttoned up. Do you like getting them as groups, or do you really like every single track? How do you like to receive?
Group them up is best. Now if sometimes we'll come back and say, hey, I hear this shaker in the perk stem, can we get that separated? Or there's we have strings in the string stem, there's violins and cellos, can we get the cellos separated out? But I think for the most part, just grouping them, stems, perk, vocal, maybe if backing vocal, if if it applies. But yeah, group them together. And then if we need further, then we'll have to, have them spill it out. And then in that case, we know that that's going to take a little bit of time, but in our mind, it's like, yeah, like today. But I also know the other thing is I know a lot of artists aren't full-time, musicians. Some people got day jobs, it's not always, I can hop to it this second. But what I would suggest is if that's the case, if you're not going to be able to get to it until tonight, let us know. It's all about communication, just so we can manage expectations. Because to be honest, I would love for, somebody that hasn't had a chance or doesn't have a big song to get that opportunity. And I don't want to have to replace the queue if we think it works so well either. So, you know, we do, you know, it's not like, I know I was saying earlier, if it's, you know, 2 days, it's too late or something. But, you know, if you're like, hey, I can't get to this right now, I'll get it. Can I get it to you tonight? You know, it may be after, you know, working hours or whatever it may be, even though in trailers we work until whenever. But still, like, just so we can manage our expectations of what, you know, when we can get those things delivered. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we have a message from Joan Mayer. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I'm just asking you to unmute.
Hi.
Hi.
So my question was, in disco, they have like where you can throw the song in and it'll automate the tags.
Yeah.
And do you like those? Because like, for instance, I might think it's a down tempo
Mhm.
beat, but it says mid tempo type thing.
I mean, I don't really rely on them. I do have it tag all my songs, but I would rely more on if someone in the description, you know, along with their contact information, did put things that were more descriptive of their song in their own, you know, kind of eyes.
Okay, I like
Obviously, it
that.
doesn't help us if someone puts everything in their description, like you sometimes see on, I don't know, like on YouTube or something. It's like, it'd be like Jay-Z, Kanye West, Eminem. It's like none of these people are on here, but you're just saying it's all these names because you know someone's gonna, you know, click on it.
Right.
But
Thank you.
yeah, I they're helpful, I guess. You know, maybe I haven't used it to its full extent, but I'd rely on the music creators, you know, tags.
And putting it in the description. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
or if there's a way to put it so that it does populate in the tags. I don't know if that's possible, but Disco seems like they're pretty responsive to feedback. So if that was something that, I don't know, was helpful, might be included. It might already be there. I don't know. I haven't used that function, but yeah, no, I think they're fine.
I think, Joan, you could also, you could see what they say, Disco, and then you can add your own tags to it or change it. And then you could also, in your metadata, add the extra sauce that you need to describe your song.
Yeah, I see. Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Jake Warren. I'm just going to ask you to unmute. See if it works. Oh,
Hello.
okay. Hi.
Hey, Jake.
Hi, how you doing? Hey, Greg, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Used to the crazy people in Hollywood screaming in the background. Apologies. Okay, so my question is, I've had a couple of people recently asking to trailerize, if they can trailerize my song. My main version tends to be the one that works better for TV in show.
Yep.
So my question is it good to have that main version and call it just, you know, main, or also not have a label on it, full mix basically, and then have a separate trailerize, and then maybe even a separate promo? So basically my question is, do I distinguish between the three categories: in show, promo, trailer, or do I go straight for the trailer and then that way I cover the bases as well, so that same version can be used in promo and in show?
Yeah, I think just having your, you know, original version, you don't have to say like in show or categorize it in any way. Just, this is the song as it was written, and then have a remix or trailerized version. And that can work for promos or trailers or whatever. You know, it could even work for, you know, in show sometimes. You know, in show for their main montages, they want something kind of a little bit more cinematic that would work for, you know, kind of like a trailer or promo as well. You know, it starts small and it gets big. But yeah, and you know, the only labeling I do is put like trailerization on it, you know, just so it kind of, we can tell the difference. And you know, because if you just say alt mix or something like that, that doesn't really mean much. You know, that could be like, oh, it has drums in this one, you know, having that word trailerize or, you know, or trailer remix, that, you know, that really signals. And I, to be honest, I'll look at that first. You know, like say if you're sending, you know, other stuff, or I come across it somehow and trailer mix, oh, what's that? And then we'll say, hey, do you have a non-trailer version? Because sometimes we'll use that in the beginning of our trailer, where it's unadulterated, and then we stop down and maybe some crazy happens, and then we get into your trailerized version. So we always are kind of thinking like an editor as well, because we have to see how it would potentially work for an editor.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Okay, we have a question from Janie Weber. Janie, are you there? Ah, good.
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Greg. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
I was curious to know if you had any recommended conferences where content creators could potentially connect with music supervisors like yourself.
I mean, I've been to, things like Durango, Sync Summit, and I think ones that, that you can kind of really get or even the Guild of Music Supervisors, those events, because a lot of supervisors are there. Obviously, they don't want to be pitched music at that point, I guess, but it's all about the relationships. You talk to them and say, hey, if you know who they are, then you're like, hey, I love that show that you work on. Just, talk to them and then be like, oh, would you mind if I, emailed you, I rep not necessarily saying like, I want to pitch you a song now. It's just like, can I follow up, or even if, just kind of make that connection first and then kind of follow up, or unless it's at a conference where the idea is that you are pitching a song, obviously then it's like, yes, this is my song, I want you to use it, or tell me more about what you're working on so that I can maybe write, to that, or get an idea of what's working for you. So I've done that at other conferences where I've met someone, I've worked with them after the conference, and it actually led to something, which is a miracle in itself. But I'm not saying it's always going to happen, but it's just about, building those relationships. It's kind of also, there's this kind of sense of, I forget the term, but like, if you know this person and then you don't know that person, but this person can kind of vouch for you, or be like, yeah, I work with that person, yeah, they have great music, that's going to elevate your connectability to the people you don't already have a connection with. It's all about networking.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We've got 2 more questions in the comments, and then Esther has her hand raised. Greg, how are you for time? We have 5 minutes left of the hour.
Yeah, I think we can get through these.
Get through these ones? Okay. Yeah. So we have Patrick up next. I'm going to ask you to... great. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, everyone. Greg, thanks so much for this. It's been awesome. Just a quick question about covers. You mentioned that they're very popular. Is there like a list of cleared or available songs that we can access? I know publishers sometimes put out lists of songs that maybe they have in their catalog, but do you have access to those kind of lists?
I mean, I don't. I mean, I could, what I mean? Like, if I just asked them, can you give me a list of songs that, that are clear or like okay to be covered? Because you never know, like certain artists may be like, no, you use my version and my version alone. So, or some are particular about if it's a male singer, they're like, I don't want a male cover being done on my song, but a female cover, fair game,
right.
But it's something that you'd have to kind of reach out to the publishers yourself. I know that's not a great answer. But there's also, the idea of just make it, what I mean? And just do it. And kind of there's always what's the term? Ask for forgiveness, not permission, in a way, but also being smart about it. I mean, maybe doing but I don't know, doing a cover of the Beatles might be okay because that costs a lot already, I mean, I think as long as it's not derivative of the original, in a sense, like, oh, it's like, like doing we're a tribute band to that band and it sounds just like what you remember, that's not going to be as good as something unique in your own take on something.
Awesome. Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
We're gonna continue with a couple more questions, but just Carl's Wolf just put in the chat disco link, and for every supervisor at the end of the month, we give you the opportunity to look at our community's disco that they've submitted one song, radio ready, with metadata. Greg, so you have the opportunity, no pressure, to look at that list, and the community, only the community that came in today can submit one song. So just so you know.
Cool.
And so
yeah,
everybody can use that link, that disco link that Carl's just put in the chat. And who's up next?
Is it like, oh, sorry. Is it hard to clear a Beatles song, even if it's a cover? It's hard to clear a Beatles song. We've tried. It also costs a lot of money, and they have to get every party approve, each of the band members' approval. I mean, their estates, or Yoko's in case of John Lennon. So it's hard to get everyone in one place at one time. So it is. But I mean, I only use the Beatles as like, oh, what a crazy idea to cover the Beatles, but it would help on the master at least. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Sorry, you had a question.
Oh no, that's actually good, because I'm sure everybody was thinking about it because the Beatles was brought up. So you answered. We were all probably collectively thinking about it. Maybe one more question or two, Carl? I don't know. It's already 11:59, so Greg, you can tell us.
I see Esther's hand up.
Okay.
Hi.
Right.
Yeah, I promise I'll be quick. Hi, Greg. So
Hi.
I joined in like super late because I was actually finishing up a deadline of a classical trailer cover for my publisher.
Nice.
So what are some current trends in trailer music that you see? Sorry if you've already covered this. I just like missed the entire session. So
no, I mean, the one trend that I was mentioning is that like there is a kind of maybe less trailerization of a song. If it's a big song, they do kind of want to play it out as it is, with minimal trailerization. So, there's still going to be those hits and accents and drums a little bit, but it's not going to be hitting you over the head like this is a big trailerization. Now, that's not for every movie, but there's been 3 now that I've seen recently where they've used no quote unquote trailerization. There's still sound design, but it is pretty much the song as it is, with some EQing of the song at points. I think maybe they were able to get into the stems or whatever to kind of strip back at points and then build it back up. But that's one that I've kind of noticed. The other one is, and it's been going on for a little bit now, it's like the very sound design heavy kind of like cue. In the beginning it's like a tick, or it's some very signature sonic identifier, so it's all about having a unique sonic branding of sorts in the trailer, whether it is a classical cover, classical trailerization, or an original piece of music. It's that hook, because a lot of library cues, they have the structure for a trailer, but does it sonically hook you? What is that thing that's going to make it stand out above the rest? And so a lot of the times we've seen recently, there's a lot of sound design for like, 2/3 of the trailer. And it's usually, horror for sure, thrillers, not so much comedies, but, it could be a drama, it's just building up that tension and that anticipation of what's to come. And then usually in the 3rd act, then it breaks into something that has a little bit more of a melody, or maybe it is the repetitive sonic branding that you've already heard, or they set it up. Maybe it, like in the Killers of the Flower Moon, they start off with a train sound, but that train sound morphs into something else and it becomes this rhythm. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily about creating a melodic theme, but rather creating a vibe and this building of like, usually it's tension, there's just this kind of mounting tension as the trailer goes along, and that unease that sometimes you feel if it's like a thriller. So sound design being used more musically, and songs not big songs not being trailerized, but still, I think as an indie artist, having your original song have a regular and a trailerized mix, not saying you have to do it for everything, but I think the songs that maybe, you know, gain a little bit more traction or you feel really lends itself to a certain type of genre of trailer.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the two big ones, I think.
Excellent. We have one last question from Michelle, who's been waiting patiently. Hi,
Yes.
Michelle.
Michelle,
Hi, hey Greg, how are you? It's been a
how
long
are you?
time.
I know.
I'm so glad to see you, and I'm so glad Pandion is having you. It's such a great organization, and you are awesome. So you were talking about the descriptions of the 3 acts, and I thought that was the best description of trailer music I've ever heard. So could you just reiterate to me, please, the first act? What are you trying to accomplish to the viewers in the first act? Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. And hello. Yeah, the first act usually is the intro, like that sets the world. Usually, you know, just to be in a generic sense, like if it was a sci-fi movie, it's going to go boom, you know, it's like it's just setting this atmosphere and tone of like, and then you get a sense like, oh, this is mysterious and otherworldly. Or, you know, maybe it's like a really upbeat, like, you know, like tickers and clicks and stuff. Oh, this is going to be lighthearted. You know, so it really sets the tone of the rest of the piece, and it also just sets up the world that the movie is going to live in. Usually the first shot is a big, expansive, you know, wide shot. You know, whether it's a shot of New York City or the desert, it's giving you a sense of like, right, what's happening here? Where are we? And then the middle section, that's where the story kicks in. That's where you're going to learn about, you know, why does this person not like this person, or what is you know, what is the drama between, you know, that's going to happen in this film. And then the third act, that's just all montage, you know, all the biggest shots, the funniest moments, you know, the wildest things, and that's just more editing, you know, faster editing. That's why we always have the music get the biggest in that section, because it's the most music heavy.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's just such a great description. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you,
All right.
Pandion community, for coming. And next week we have another workshop we're going to be starting with November. And you can tune into our Facebook or Instagram and our emails that we send you. On Tuesdays, we have live stream events with their wellness program. It's called Pandion Unplugged. And our next guest is Jasmine Sadie Kunert. She's about setting boundaries and facing obstacles as puzzles to resolve. So once again, this is a wellness live stream, live on Instagram and on Facebook at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you, Greg, for coming, and thank you, everyone. And we'll just look for you next week. Have a beautiful week. Bye.
Everyone have a great week. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.